Hey, good folks, Dr. Franklin here. This is a mini lecture dealing with social media ethics, and this is part one of a series of lectures I'm doing on this topic. In this particular presentation, we'll talk about privacy issues in social media. After we do that, we'll discuss factors linked to egregious privacy violations in social media. And then finally, toward the tail end of the presentation, we'll talk about data collection issues and privacy issues as it relates to the usage of Facebook, Twitter, and Google. July 26, 2018 will be a day that Mark Zuckerberg will not forget. On that day, Facebook's market value plummeted more than 100 billion. The plummet occurred because of privacy lapses that Facebook has had throughout the years, increasing pressure to overhaul their practice of collecting data due to the General Data Protection Regulation by the European Union, and consent from users and collaborations with Cambridge Analytica that inappropriately access the information of 87 million people. Facebook at its core is about gathering extensive data on its users so that they can optimally target those users with advertising. Facebook is not alone in this approach, in that microblogging services, Twitter, and Google use this approach as well. In this mini lecture, we will discuss ethical issues, mainly privacy issues, that arise with the proliferation of social media involving the exchange of personal information. How do we go about defining privacy? Now, privacy is one of those terms that individuals struggle to define, and depending on the context, for example, economic, political, or cultural, it can be a term increasingly complex to understand. Alan Weston defined privacy as the claim of individuals, groups, or institutions to determine for themselves when, how, and to what extent information about them is communicated to others. In simple terms, privacy is the right to control one's own information, and many believe it to be an ever evolving concept. In terms of ethics, privacy concerns are usually at the forefront when social networking sites are involved. James Rachels makes the case that privacy is important because it allows for the selective disclosure of personal information in various developing and continuing personal relationships. In the absence of this control, the variety of these relations would fade. He therefore proffers that we value privacy because it allows us to take part in various kinds of social relationships that are defined by how much information about ourselves we share with others. Many view Rachel's thoughts as a starting point for discussion about ethical issues in computer information privacy. Some view Rachel's theory on privacy as too narrow for social computing systems that combine online social interactions with with context-aware computing. Meridian holds that the prevalence of big data that exemplifies information technology today raises questions about the relation between privacy and information that is not intimate or sensitive, and that is more and more collected in public. Meridian believes that Rachel's theory holds relevance in that it may highlight privacy issues that arise within social networks. Privacy violations in the digital era are experienced as more egregious when there is a lack of transparency from social network sites on how personal information will be used. Tawani and Moore formulated a restricted access slash limited control theory that basically says that the proper use of personal information should fall somewhere along the spectrum ranging from total privacy to complete disclosure when in a situation where the individual is normatively protected from intrusion, interference, and information accessed by others. For example, normatively protected situations could include a therapist client relationship. Tawani and Moore believe that some personal information must at times be shared with others. If one is not even on social media, then they can't have a privacy violation per se, but rather a loss of privacy. Moore believes that the rules and conditions governing private situations should be clear and known to persons affected by them. He termed the aforementioned statement the publicity principle, and he believes that it should be worked into privacy policies of diverse kinds, including cookies. Cookies are files the internet sites send to, retrieve from the user's computer system while they surf the internet and take part in activities. Moore believes that users should be notified if a site involves cookies, and the user should be given the opportunity to provide informed consent. As long as users are informed of a service provider's practices in gathering and using personal information, there is little concern. This will allow the users limited control over their personal data in a way that respects their autonomy, competence, disclosure readiness, understanding, and voluntariness. Unfortunately, problems arise with the lack of limits to the amount of secretive and flagrant data gathering, dissemination, aggregation, analysis, and profiling being done by some corporations. Additionally, another issue is that terms of service or end user license agreements are made up of thousands of words and text that can be difficult to read. This is the de facto standard for users providing consent, though it's not very accessible and sometimes does not include the ethical content such as autonomy, competence, and other principles listed earlier as put forth by Beauchamp in 1986. Long user agreements allow companies to omit words such as research from their terms of service. Catherine Flick recommends a theory of waiver of normative expectations, which would be much more accessible and straightforward. A series of waivers would allow the user to waive a series of behavioral and normative expectations. Facebook is the most popular social networking service in the world with over a billion monthly active users. It supplanted MySpace as the number one site, and MySpace overtook Friendster. Facebook does not cost money to join, but it does cost you your privacy. Throughout the years, Facebook has had many issues with privacy. Initially, when the company arose to the forefront of social media in 2004, they were touted as being much more private than MySpace with their restricted profiles. In other words, users could only see profiles of friends in their network. However, over the years, that has changed to where one's profile picture and some basic information has variably been accessible to everyone on the internet. Facebook had a feature called Beacon, which partnered with third party websites and posted internet activity of users automatically on their page. This caused an outcry from several people, and eventually that feature was disabled. Additionally, friends of users were able to check in people, and of course, this creates privacy violations which could undoubtedly affect relationships. Cambridge Analytica was once an exemplar for intelligent data driven electioneering, but they partnered with Facebook in a way that caused them to harvest personal data on nearly 87 million users by accessing 270,000 users with an app called This Is Your Digital Life. Facebook has scanned links between users in moments when their privacy was really being questioned. Cambridge filed for insolvency or bankruptcy, and Facebook continues to reassure its users that they are working diligently to reduce risk. As a result of Facebook's issues with privacy, the microblogging service Twitter has made attempts to enhance the health of their platform. Twitter has been faced with scrutiny of the distribution of fake news, election interference, and wider data privacy criticisms. Twitter has made attempts to comply with the General Data Protection Regulation, and as a result of data and app purges, Twitter lost a million monthly active users and Twitter stock plunged by 15%. Even with all the changes Twitter has strove to make, still collects an abundance of metadata from users that allow the formation of comprehensive profiles. Metadata is data that gives information about other data. Some of the information collected includes every status update, picture taken, personal contact data, business contacts, web browsing, locations visited, and interest. Google is a powerful search engine that is an internet phenomenon. At no financial cost to its millions of users, Google processes more than 40,000 search queries per day and 1.2 trillion Google searches per year. Google has had real issues with data privacy, as emphasized by the fact that they've updated their privacy policy 28 times since the company started in 1999. Google collects a vast amount of information passively, and this information includes search history of the user, YouTube history of the user, location and timeline of places the user has visited, application used by the user, and their advertisement profile. From the minute a person powers up their smartphone, Google is able to track everywhere that a person has been since the first day they started using Google. Unless location is disabled, Google is able to track your movements and activities. A particular ethical interest for users of Google is the knowledge graph, which presents the user with answers to queries instead of links to potential answers. Though the knowledge graph enhances users' ability to find information, there's the ethical question of whether we should trust Google as a gatekeeper of our knowledge bases. Jules Verne emphasized that both from an ethical and democratic perspective, it is implausible that the answers Google offers are diverse and nuanced knowledge of the information on the web. Most companies defend themselves by pointing to the terms of services that the users agreed to sign to justify their actions. As we've discussed earlier, the terms of service agreements are typically very verbose and lean more on the side of disclosure rather than ethics. Furthermore, it would probably take the average person approximately 244 hours per year to read all of the privacy policies for the sites they use. That amounts to about 40 minutes a day, and that amount of time is applicable to how internet was used in 2008 when folks used the web about 72 minutes per day. Today, the average user is on the web close to 3 hours per day.